In StepStool Lesson 6, we're going to use 3ds Max to create an animation of our step stool from AutoCAD, as shown in the following animation. First thing we'll do is we'll import our file. You can either link it or import it. If you import it, you can ascertain a high resolution through the import features. So go ahead and select it. It'll default as a DWG file. And once it's open, we want to change the surface deviation. It defaults as 1, and I'm going to change it to 0.01. Now, it will be a bigger file, but it'll render at a better resolution. And then the layers are very handy because if you want to update it, you can always re-import it in and just change a layer without having to redo the entire project. And then press OK. Now, remember, you're essentially bringing it into a empty space. So we're going to want to add lights and textures and a floor here. So there's nothing here right now. So I'm just going to zoom in on each window. And I did that by clicking on the bottom right corner. And then go ahead and change the material editors. If you don't see the same window, you can go to the modes. And you can grab some texture. Now, the only thing with the textures is it does render slower, but you want to go ahead and try it, especially if you're going to be just doing images. And you can drag it and put it on the object. And when you put it on the object, you want to make sure that you select the icon that previews it. And you can play with the textures, and there's a lot of fun to be had here. And you want to put them on each layer that you've created. Now, I'm going to go ahead and grab a texture from the internet after I render this. So take a look at it and you can save it after you render it. And right now it's just going to be a black background. So save it as a JPEG file. Alright, so once I save this, then I'm going to go on the internet and I'm going to type in wood texture. And so when you do that, you'll invariably end up with something like this. And did this through Google. And I want to make sure you actually select the image itself and not just a low resolution preview. So view the image, and then I typically right click it and copy it to image. And I've already done this, so there it is. And once it's in there, I'll simply drag it and I'll put it onto the material editor bar. And the reason why I do this is because it gives me the ability to manipulate the object, where if I just drag it on the object itself, I don't have any control over it. So here I am putting the wood on, and it's going to look very realistic because it is a photograph, and it'll also render at a much easier way. So I'll click the M, and that's for material, and I can change the size of this, and you really do need to experiment with this because some images are smaller than others, and so 2 is obviously twice the size, and this seems to work well. And I can also change the way that it's laying on here, and there's a tile feature also, and sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. So I'm going to go ahead and keep it on there. And then it looks pretty good, but I need to make this into a little bit more real-world application here. So I'm going to click on the top view, and I'll go to the tool panel. I'm going to select the plane, and I'll drag that. And because I made this at 0, 0 going up, it's going to be below the surface. And now I'm going to, again, grab another material. Now you could grab a texture, but I'm going to take this photograph that I found of a brickwork, and then I'll just put it onto the material editor. And then I will simply drag it onto the floor that I've created. Again, you want to make sure you preview it. Now, you can't see anything here because the resolution is such, so I'm going to change this to 50. And I'll do the width and the height, and there you see it. And you can have a lot of fun doing this. Alright, so there's a top view of it. Now let's go ahead and select this, and I go around this object and inspect it. Now we don't have any shadows here. There's a lot of things we can do to make this look better. But before we do that, what we'll do is we're going to go back to the wireframe so I can build, and I'm going to create a circle. I'm going to start in the center and just make it a little wider, and this is where my camera is going to go. And I can right click and select move, and then on the green arrow just move it up. And then I'll grab a camera, and I want to make sure that I select a target camera because it's going to target onto the StepStool. And if you look at the top view, it's not centered right now, so I can just right click and move it. But if you select camera or C on your keyboard, it automatically show you what the camera is seeing. So let's go ahead and move this camera over. Now there's essentially two parts of this camera. There's the camera itself and the point to where it is seeing. And I'm going to select the camera. In the assign controller, go to path constraint and say OK. And I'd hit that check mark, and then I'll go ahead and come down here and select add path. And then go and click the path, that circle that we made, and it's automatically attached to that camera. And it's 100 frames. So a typical animation for 30 frames is about a second. So we only have about a little over 3-second animation that we've created here. Okay, and you've got a hand tool down there, and so you're essentially seeing time here with this bar. Okay, so we're going to add some lights now. So go and select on the standard light an omni light, and it defaults to a shadow, and we want to put this up above. So I'll simply click above it. Now I want to add another one, and I'm going to put it below it. Now this one I don't want to put a shadow on, and if you have shadows it can take longer to render, so I'll just make sure that one's not on. And I'll probably want to reposition this a little bit, so I can click onto any window and zoom in or out. Select the light, move it over. And it's probably not a bad idea to do a quick little rendering at some point here. So click on the 3/4 view and click the teapot. It's going to default just to a quick little rendering, but you can see now we have a shadow, and it's starting to look a lot more realistic. And I can go ahead and save this as a JPEG or a PNG. But we've yet to make the movie. Now, in order to make the movie, we've got to change some of the parameters here. So you'll see the teapot on the top right, and that's how we'll do this. So the teapot with the controller in here, now it's 100 frames, so we're going to check either one will be fine, the range 0 to 100, and then I can change the resolution. Now remember, the greater the resolution, the longer it's going to take to render. And I can render this as either an AVI, which is a pretty standard, or there's also a QuickTime. You have to try it and see what's easiest for you and what renders fastest. And then I'll go ahead and name this, and we'll save it here. So we're saving where it's going to render. We're not actually rendering this yet. And just use the default compressing. All right, and then save your work, and you are ready to render this. So go ahead and render it. Now this will probably take about 5 or 10 minutes to see your results. And you have completed the exercise.